We'd like to start today by acknowledging that we're on the unceded sovereign lands of the Gadigal people and pay our respects to elders past and present. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to So You're Disabled. This episode is brought to you by Spoonie, the world's first social network for neurodivergent, chronically ill and disabled people.
Hey, I'm Soph, I'm disabled, and my pronouns are she, they.
I'm Tam, I'm living with a disability, and my pronouns are she, her.
So today we're going to be talking about professionalism, and we said we would always give you a heads up if we're going to talk about work. And today we're going to be talking about work in the context of professionalism. So content warning, if that's particularly difficult for you to listen to or think about, feel free to skip this episode. We're going to hopefully make it as relatable as possible though. So I guess when I think about professionalism, I think about when people mention things like eye contact and body language and the right thing to say and the wrong thing to say and all of this pressure that gets put on us to be professional. And what does that mean?
Well, I think that societally we have associated professionalism with all of these really positive connotations. So it's like this belief that if you're professional, you're somehow better.
Yeah, that's true. And I have always felt like, even in school, I think even school has requirements to be professional. I remember in school I was told, I needed to grow up and be more mature and whatever. And, maturity wasn't my issue. I've always been quite mature for my age. Haha, trauma. But, it's more this idea that if you're professional, then you wouldn't, laugh about things like farts or whatever it is. And therefore you're not good at your job, you're not a good student, you're not smart, you're not highbrow, all of these things. I think they all tie into each other. And all of that is what I think of when I think of professionalism. And honestly, it just gives me the ick. I'm like, yuck. Let me just live my life. Let me just live my life. Fine. You don't find farts funny? That's okay. I do. And it's great.
I think it almost even extends to dating sometimes. I was on a dating app recently and I saw this guy who had on his profile that he's a really great +1 because he's very presentable and really good with people. And it's like, well, what does that even mean? And what that means, what he's trying to say there, or at least how I take it to mean, is this thing that he's, really great, really presentable because he's really well groomed, well dressed. He's really good at eye contact, at small talk, at being able to communicate with people. And it's what? That just honestly just instantly turns me off because it's I hate small talk. I'm not going to be a good +1 by that standard then. Maybe that's why I'm single. But honestly, I don't want to talk about the weather over and over and over again. I was on a second date recently and I literally asked the guy what his opinion on capital punishment is.
That's so you. I remember when you'd have first dates and you'd come back and you'd be like, all right, Soph, don't worry. I've canvassed his thoughts on abortion, on capital punishment, on politics, on racism. So, I don't think I'll see him again because his views weren't quite aligned with mine. But, I've really canvassed that. And I'm hearing this going, holy shit. These poor people that are on a job interview with you, disguised as a date.
I wonder if that's why I've been told I'm a bit too lefty.
I'm lefty, but I don't. I'd like to think I'm a bit more subtle about these things.
Yeah, but it's important information because if their views are harmful,
yeah,
I don't want to see them again. Time is our most precious capital. I'm not going to waste my time with you.
That's why I show up with my tote bag that says fuck the police, both in English and in Yiddish. But yeah, so I think I agree with you. There's like this professionalism even in just how we present ourselves to the world
Yeah.
and, how you're meant to present yourself. And it's like, wow, just be yourself. Why can't we all just be ourselves?
Well, for me, since I was like a child, I have always been told that I speak too fast. And I think it was almost like cute and endearing when I was a kid. But then as I became a teenager, everyone, like at school, my dad, everyone would tell me, you speak way too fast. And it's not professional. So my dad used to tell me all the time in Italian, like, you're not skiing, Tamara. Stop speaking so fast. So every time someone talks about snow or skiing, I like instantly associate that with how I speak way too fast. But
I
it's
love
like,
that.
sorry, like I maybe just because I'm like a bit of like a nervous, anxious person, but also I think it's just because I'm Italian. Like Italians speak really fast. We gesticulate, we speak fast. Like, why are you discriminating against me? Like, apparently it's not professional. Well, sorry, like I'm Italian.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that. I think it's definitely the ADHD as well, but like, I am Jewish, obviously. Like, we speak fast too. Like, keep up. One of my favorite shows as a kid was Gilmore Girls, and I think it's
Me
because
too.
I like felt so seen. I was like, yeah, they
Yeah.
talk really fast, so do I.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize they were talking fast, to be honest, until like the ads would come up. This is how old I am. The ads would come up on TV when it was like being shown on Channel 9, and they would be like the fast talking mother and daughter duo, and I'm like, are they fast talking? I just think they talk normally. Like that's a normal pace. Like, let's go. We don't have time. Like, get to the point. But it's all these things, It's like, don't talk too quickly. Be mindful of what you're saying. Be mindful of how you're dressed. Be
Oh,
mindful of your body language.
and be mindful of not using notes.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's a really, really big one for me because no matter how over-prepared I can be for anything, I'll forget it. I need notes. Sometimes I even actually need like a whole script and I need to read it word for word because, like brain fog, it's a legitimate like cognitive issue. But I've been told so many times, like at uni, for example, my professor told me under no circumstance can I ever use notes when presenting to a client because it's not professional. But I have stressed about that so much and like stayed up at night time being like, oh my God, like how am I going to do it sort of thing if I can't even do it in an assignment at uni? And I've then been ableist towards myself, like saying things like, well, why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? Why can other people do it and not me? And it's like, well, I think the issue here is that professionalism is judging us based on what we can't do rather than focusing on what we can do. Like if I can read notes or at least have them there, knowing that if I need them, they're accessible and I can read them, I can do a much better job. So like professionalism is hindering our ability to do better. And it's like why should we do that just to appear professional? Like fuck that. Like what? And like I remember my friend asked me to help him out at uni like as a volunteer for a session chair, and that day I woke up and I couldn't remember anything I had just said. Like to, my mum, for example, that morning. So I really needed to read word for word this like script that I had written. And it was fine. I did it. And like there weren't any issues. So I don't understand. How does that make me not look professional just for needing that?
The other one that really grinds my gears is when we're taught how to give presentations in a professional setting or any setting, and you're using like PowerPoint or even lecturers will talk about this when they're lecturing. And we're all told you should keep your points on your slides to a minimum. Don't read off the slide because that's really boring. And yeah, just minimal information on the slide. I'm sorry, that's really inaccessible. I need a good summary of what you're going to talk about on the slide. And in fact, at a minimum, read what you've got in the slide. And if you're a good presenter, that's not boring. Yeah, add some stuff to what you're saying, but have the central essence of what you're saying in the slide so that when I inevitably drift off and come back, I can read your little spiel on the slide and know, okay, that's what you're talking about, because I can see exactly like where you've started and now you've maybe moved on a little bit, but I can follow along. But if they've got the minimum information on the slide and, it's not clear where they started, honestly, they may as well being like, blah, 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 blah. That's all I hear because I'm like, no idea what you're saying. I drifted off. I came back. Don't know where you are. Don't know where I am. I'm just going to pretend like I'm following along. And it just really, whenever I'm talking to students, I really try to emphasize the importance of undoing what we're taught about how to give a good presentation, that it should include a good summary on your slides, and you shouldn't be afraid to read off your slides because all of those things are not inherently doing a bad job of giving a presentation. It's just we're taught, I don't know by who.
Ableist standards. That's by who.
That's a good presentation. I don't enjoy personally presentations where they've got one dot point and it's got nothing to do with the central thing they're talking about.
Because I'm going to forget everything they've said anyways. But then exactly, right? So it's not good for you when you're having to watch or listen to the presentation. But equally, as I was saying before, it's not good for me and for other people, like me who were presenting, because then it's also really bad on our mental health. Being told by my professor, for example, that if I'm doing those things, if I'm reading notes or off a script, that not being professional is going to lead to negative outcomes. Well, that really impacts my mental health, my self-esteem, my confidence. And it's well, I can't be professional. I can't conform to these ableist standards that society has set for able-bodied people because I'm not an able-bodied person. So what does that then mean? Do I just remain excluded and have to live my whole life thinking I'm just not a professional person, and so therefore all of these very negative things about me and my potential future success?
I'm just so baffled as well by this expectation for us to remember everything off the top of our heads. Also now when I go to cafes and stuff and they don't write down my order, they just try and remember it all. Why are you doing that? It freaks me out. And honestly, I see when they're struggling as well and they're just trying to keep up with this expectation. And I'm like, it's okay to write it down.
But not if you want to be professional. It's apparently not okay to write it down.
I'm just, why? It's not, I'm not impressed by that. I mean, if you've got the memory and you can memorize all this stuff, that's amazing. Great. But that shouldn't be a standard we all have to aspire to.
Absolutely.
I remember the most random stuff, to be honest. I cannot remember what I said at the start of this episode, but I can remember people's number plates.
Wow, that's really impressive. I think my memory is I can just remember characters that I really like. From the OC when we were obsessed when we were 13. Really problematic TV show, but at 13 I didn't realize all these things. And so I had lots of crushes on certain
you
characters.
Remember people you have crushes on. That's what you're saying.
But also other character names that I didn't have crushes on, But anyways, I'll stop ranting now. The other thing that I think about when I think of professionalism is these really rigid, very structured work hours that we just have to do in order to be professional. But we can't because it's just inconsistent with our needs. For example, there are so many things that we need to consider, our energy. We should be able to work around our energy, which is already so limited. But having these very structured, very rigid work hours, we can't do that. So for example, sometimes, and I know this is a big privilege if you're working from home, but sometimes as disabled people, we have to be on a bed. Sometimes I notice I need to be doing any work, even just writing down the things that I want to discuss, for potential podcast ideas on a bed because I'm just too fatigued to. Or just regular breaks. I'm still horrified by this story that my friend shared with me. And so he has ADHD and he was working in the office and he needs regular breaks throughout the day. So he did. He would get up and have these regular breaks. and his colleague reported him to their boss. And so then he needed to have this very intense and very awful conversation with his boss about his productivity and his lack of work ethic. And it's like, what? Like, it shouldn't be a privilege to take breaks. It should literally be the status quo because it's a need. And then what I think that isn't understood is that by doing this, employees aren't going to feel like we're not going to feel valued or connected, which is actually, according to numerous peer-reviewed articles that I've read, if you would like their names, by the way, just DM me and I'll give them to you. It literally impacts business outcomes for an organization. So, like, ironically, organizations and businesses still think that in order to be successful, they have to be really, really professional. But actually, and like, so that's going to impact, their reputation and their relationships, and it's going to improve them. But actually, one of the most important stakeholders in every organization and every business is their employees. And research shows that if employees aren't feeling valued and connected, their engagement at work is going to decrease significantly. And when that happens, they're not going to be able to achieve positive outcomes for the company. So it's like, well, how can we feel valued and connected when what we need isn't being recognized or given to us, or we're not comfortable to do that? So it's like a win-win situation. And also my other issue with that is that societally, we're told to be unique and to be ourselves, and that's the best thing we can do. But when we are ourselves, we're told that that's actually wrong and we can't do it that way.
Yeah, I find it wild, because the breaks thing, actually research shows that regular breaks, like every hour, having a 5-minute break at least, increases productivity. It's all of these things, like when you meet the needs of disabled people living with disability, you actually make things better for everyone. And the research backs us up on that. And, it's in things like breaks, like regular breaks, that actually increases productivity. And in particular, meets the needs of someone with ADHD who needs regular breaks. And so it's just wild, these ingrained beliefs that workplaces have about what's professional, what it looks like to be productive, what it looks like to have a good work ethic, that are based on what? What evidence is there for this archaic idea that you should be at your desk pumping out work regularly, and that's the only way to be productive and have a good work ethic? I mean, I can get a bunch of work done in a very short amount of time when I'm hyper-focusing, because that's how my brain works. And then the other time, sometimes my brain is like, la-di-da-di-da, just not all there. And it takes me longer to get things done, and I think that's only normal. That is a very human experience, to have times where you're more productive than others. But this obsession with productivity, with professionalism, it's harming us. I mean, another one, even when you talk about energy, is work meetings or class, and this expectation that you have to have your camera on, because if it's online and it's on Zoom or whatever, because then you're demonstrating that you're listening. I'm listening, but I actually listen better if I don't have my camera on, maybe. But that's not a conversation we're able to have. It's just the expectation that you do. Or sometimes a person will be like, I don't mind. And then you don't have to. But it's really hard to constantly have these conversations. I think the other thing is it's so exhausting to have to constantly be like, actually, because of my disability, we shouldn't do things like that. Actually, because of my disability, it would be really good if we didn't have to do that. Actually, because of my disability, we should be able to take breaks every hour for 5 minutes. just leave people be. It's like,
Absolutely.
let them do their thing. Why are you worried about professionalism? Why?
Especially when professionalism just creates these like very toxic works environments. And all that it's doing is like sustaining systemic ableism. Like it is exactly as you said, it's so harmful to us. And it's just excluding us from being able to produce the best work that we can, such as needing regular breaks. Like if we are doing what we need to do for ourselves and therefore not being professional, we're viewed very negatively and viewed in this very like, oh, they're just, they're not good enough. They're not working enough. They're not presentable enough. They're not good enough for me to introduce to my parents, because they don't have good eye contact and they won't be able to make a good impression. And that's what I think is terrible, is that professionalism is synonymous with all of these positive things that are actually just ableist. And I think that what we need to be doing is shifting from professionalism being so important to authenticity being more important. We need to be celebrating authenticity and us being authentic people rather than being professional. And in so doing, I feel that will increase our value, which is so important to disabled people and to our mental health and to our inclusion societally.
I think even just let's have an expectation of just being authentic and let people just be who they are and base your thoughts on their work, on their actual work. And that's it. Because when there's this expectation of professionalism, it's even, I notice it in how I interact with people at work. I'm this weird, stiff version of myself where I'm not sure what to say, because you also you shouldn't overshare, but I'm also not sure what professional conversation is. What conversation is appropriate for the workplace and what isn't, and that changes and depends on the workplace, and all of these types of things that are just I think they lock out disabled people from accessing these spaces as well, because if we're not behaving in the appropriate way, if you haven't got the memo, so to speak, about what is and isn't okay, what language is okay, how you should say it, then you're just not viewed as being welcome in that space. You shouldn't be here because you're not performing the way that you should be. And that's really shit.
Yeah. And I think it's understandable that you're feeling like a very stiff version of yourself, because exactly in so doing, we're not feeling welcome because we're not having a safe space being created for us. And that is so problematic because it is so harmful to us and who we are.
It's like when places ask, if you're going to an event or something, and it's what are your accessibility requirements? I don't know how to can everyone just be totally chill and we all just be ourselves? That would be great, because I want to go to events and meet people and stuff. I don't mind meeting people, but I hate small talk just like you do.
Oh, and shaking hands?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I mean, sometimes I'm okay to shake hands, but other times I'm I don't want to touch other people and I don't want them to touch me.
But then it's also in a post-COVID era, is it even what we should be doing? Should we be spreading germs? It's just, I then just get so in my head and start overthinking it. And then I'm oh my God, what do I do? What do I not do? Do I shake hands? Do I not shake hands? But then I don't want these people touching me. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just COVID was good in terms of when we were in lockdown and everyone viewed it as a COVID world. It was good because there wasn't this expectation to touch people and whatever. But the more that people view it as a post-COVID world, I'm yep, you're not, you don't think that there's a problem now and you want to shake hands and ugh. Anyway, not that it's not the people that are gross. It's just I just don't want to touch other people unless I know them. And like, I don't know, and I feel like it, but there's always an expectation that you have to. And I hate that there's that expectation. Maybe if there weren't the expectation, I'd be fine with it. Maybe it's just the expectation. I don't know. Anyway.
Sounds like you're like a bit of like a rebel, like wanting to do the opposite of like what you've been told.
What do they call it? Pathological demand avoidance? Maybe. Anyways, that's for my psychology session. That's for therapy. But I think, these like expectations on us about shaking hands and small talk especially, the small talk I really struggle with because often I find myself in this situation where I'm meeting someone, I don't know what to say, we've exchanged the niceties, and then I'm like, Sophie, ask something. Sophie, say something. Sophie, it's getting awkward. Sophie, there's a silence. Sophie, it's silent. It's silent. Are they going to say something? Oh my God. And then they're like, oh, so what do you do on the weekends? And I'm like, oh, that was okay. Great. Well, yeah, I mean, what do I do? What do I do? And then I'm like, what do I do? What do I do on the weekends? What do I do? I go for walks. And they're like, oh, that's great. And then there's, but like everything I'm thinking, I'm like, what do I do? What do I ask? What do I say? Sophie, say something. Sophie, brain. But like if I was just talking to you or even like meeting someone where there's not that expectation of professionalism, I'd be like, oh, like, oh, I noticed this. Like, what do you think? And blah, blah, blah. Or what do you think about capitalism? Isn't that a drag? All that sort of stuff. So, but this expectation of like, it's only professional if you talk about this and not that, that really I struggle with a lot. The small talk really I find so exhausting.
Oh my God, same. And then the constant rumination, at least for me, after like these interactions have happened. And then you're like, oh my God, why did I say that?
Yeah.
Why did I do that? Oh my God, they're going to think all of these things about me now. Oh.
Literally, Tamara, this whole time I've been like, why did I share that whole story about that date? It wasn't even relevant. Oh my God.
It was great and it was so funny and I loved it.
Well, thank you.
I love hearing that story.
I might edit it afterwards.
No, I love it. Please keep it.
Okay. Well, we've got to wrap up. This has been a really good
but just
conversation.
really quickly, having curly hair, I've always been told my whole, like, in, like, media that, like, you have to be taken seriously, straighten your hair. Fuck that. I do. I put so much product in my hair to tame it, probably because I've internalized a lot of that. But I think, like, we should really stand up against all of this. We need to, like, shift away from professionalism. It's harmful to us. Like, time to stop.
Absolutely, especially when, you can't straighten your hair, you don't have, like, the resources to do that, or putting your hair up causes migraines and stuff.
Yeah,
like
for me, all the time. That's why I don't put it up.
Yeah. There are times when I, like, don't have it in me to put it up, or I have a migraine or something like that. Or, I mean, I'm getting better at learning the quick way to make my curly hair look professional, but, it's taken time. Thank you. It's taken time because for so long I just straightened it, but it was like a half-assed job, so it was kind of like kinky and kinks in it. It wasn't entirely straight. Anyways, we should wrap up. But this has been a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think let's forge our own definition of professionalism.
Or let's just absolutely burn professionalism to the ground.
You know what? I stand with that. Let's do that.
And let's just be authentic.
Mm-hmm. Let's like channel your rebellious energy and say no. Taking a stand here.
You know what? If you're ever in a workplace situation with me or like an event or whatever, just be authentic. I love it.
And ask about capital punishment.
Ask about capital punishment today.
Okay, well, take care of yourselves.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.